Welcome back. Today we wrap up that torque box. Okay, I'm working on test fitting these pieces together. I think I said earlier I'm going to put the upper torque box in first and then the lower. But before I do either of that, I'm test fitting them together to make sure that they made up just right. This might not have been an issue if I bought a one-piece torque box and then disassembled it, because obviously they would have started and made it up perfectly. But you can see kind of the lower flange here. There's daylight in between these. And I just have it held by a little spring clamp just to see how it fits together. So I think on this one, I'm going to manipulate this back tab here, this little bottom tab on the upper torque box half, so it flushes, it comes down a little more flush, and that hopefully will close this gap. On this one, I want to keep the bottom surface, this is underside of the car, just as one straight plate. So if this tab needs to bend that way to mate up with it, I'll do that. Similar thing on the top. These two flanges go up against the side wall there. I forget what the panel's called, but there's kind of a similar, maybe 1/8 inch gap. And it's just a matter that the flanges are at a different angle. So in this one, I've got where the floor support firewall is going to be here. So this angle's kind of defined, and I'll manipulate this lower one and the lower torque box to come up to meet it. So I think these things are going to be much easier off of the car. So I'll bend a little bit of metal and see if we can get a better fit. Okay, I'm doing a test fit, running into some minor concerns. Hopefully they're minor. I don't know if you can see, if it'll focus. The upper torque box is actually fitting pretty well against the inner frame rail. However, when you get up closer to the sideboard, it's going to be pretty tough to get in there and show you, but there's there we go, fairly sizable gap, probably 1/4 inch up there. So I'm guessing that when they formed this is supposed to have a jog in it, and it does. There's a little bend over right here where it kind of scooches out a little bit. I might need to see if I can rebend that, just so it'll fit a little more flushly. I can't weld up. I mean, I could, but it would be pretty messy to try to weld that up. Okay, I took the upper half of the torque box and I actually split it. I made a cut down here and moved it out to the right width. What I'm going to do is I'm going to weld at the top there and then probably cut it off here and then make a little filler piece in there. And I've never done this before. Not quite like this. I've pieced in some sheet metal before, but this will be the first time really modifying an angle like this, or a piece, so wish me luck. That was welding up so nicely, I just kept on going. I didn't even make a filler piece. Okay, I don't know if you can tell from this angle. There's the little joggle I put in there. It's shadowy, you can't tell, but it's much closer to where it should be. I'm glad I took the time to do that. Okay, so we're to the front with the lower half of the torque box here. I did need to modify the corner a little bit here and actually grind down just about 1/4 inch of the top flange of the floor support, because it was interfering with this vertical part right here. But not a big deal. That got out of the way and now it'll fit up there nicely. Okay, I have the top part of the torque box all prepped, ready for welding. You can see the holes there, frame rail underneath, and everywhere it's going to weld. And the sideboard over here has weld through primer on it. And I have the lower torque box clamped up. There's Obviously a couple places where I misjudged kind of where it was mating, but not a problem. So what I'm going to do now that I know that both pieces are going to be in the right spot, I'm going to make sure everything's snug, fit up, massage whatever I need to, and weld in the top part of the torque box. So that way, still some prep I need to do on the bottom. I'll drop the bottom out once the top is in place, bend a couple of flanges up front or up top so it mates a little better, but making progress. Okay, I'm fitting in the lower torque box. I have my jack just with a little hockey puck there, lifting it up, so I'm making sure I'm making contact with the floor support. And I am coming across a few interference issues. So you can see this front flange. This flange needs to be straightened, but at the back here, it is touching. So that's pulling up there. This flange is in pretty good spot at the bottom, underneath here. Now, here's what I'm seeing. This is just about all the way up against, and I have a gap at the top still. And I think I talked about this earlier. It can pull in a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop out this bottom, see if I can adjust the bend of it a little bit, and then adjust this top flange to mate up a little closer, just by bending so it comes a little closer, and see if that gets us to a point where it's closer. I don't know, that's significantly much too far to weld up. And now underneath the car, this is the floor support looking forwards. And you can see here's the upper part of the torque box and the lower part. It's mated up actually really close. I can, just putting a little pressure, these two flanges made up here. But if you can see, it starts off touching the frame rail here and then gaps out to probably 3/16 to 1/4 of an inch. So when I drop this down, I'm just going to put this in the vise and bend it a few degrees so it meets up a little closer. Let me show you what I'm dealing with here. I maybe talked about before, I've got this gap here. I've got the jack pushing up so it's flush up against the floor support. And this flange on the side, well, this one's bent, but you can maybe see these are in at the base of the flange as far as it'll go. So it can't move any further back from this point here. But I've still got a 1/4 inch gap here. And if you bear with me, I'll come across here and you can see those don't line up. Obviously, I'm missing by half a weld hole. So here's what I think I need to do. I think I need to drop this out and see if I can massage this so that I can move this entire piece back about a 1/4 inch or so. That'll give me, allow these to mate up. It'll allow the upper and lower torque box to mate up back there. And everything's just gonna be a lot nicer instead of rebending and then figuring something out with the flanges over there. So that's the short-term path forward. Okay, here is how I think I'm going to tackle this. I need to move this flange here back to right about here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to see if I can cut, this is the outer frame rail. You can see where it's got this jagged little edge here. I'm going to cut a line straight down, and then from the upper kick panel here as well, kind of follow this contour and cut down, and see if I can rebend this, straighten it out and put a bend to put it right about there. Wish me luck. So this is fun. I just went and turned on the angle grinder with a cutting disc on here, and I didn't even touch anything. As soon as I turned it on, it disintegrated and sent about a third of the cutting wheel somewhere very rapidly. I couldn't find it. So wear your eye protection, kids. Okay, let me show you what I've done. This piece wasn't bending, this flange. It had welds built up in the corner, really strengthening it, so no matter how much I tried to flatten it, instead of straightening out, it had a kink in it, so it was never going to lay flat. So I cut it off. The idea is cut it off, and I cleared space on the other side, so I still left a little bit of the L. So it'll now, once I position the torque box in place, I'm going to clamp the flange to the torque box. Once I have it positioned, then I can tack it in place, remove the torque box, and weld it back up where it mates up. Okay, so all that in place, that let the upper torque box shift backwards, giving us about that 1/4 inch or however much we need. As you can see, they're off a little bit, but my gap has closed to 1/16 of an inch. And I believe if I can bend this flange a little bit, we're gonna close that up, because it's a lot closer at the root of the bend, if you will, than it is out here. So that should come up a little bit to meet, that should come up a little bit to meet. Everything else is lining up pretty well. On the other side, the spot welds for the upper and lower that were off by a half a hole are now overlapping, so that's great. The only thing that kind of gives me pause is with all of this now in place, I've clamped this to the inner kick panel, I believe. Whatever the sideboard we're calling it, we'll call it a kick panel. I've clamped this to the kick panel, and that pulled it away. Not enough to, well, enough that I'm not going to be able to weld it shut. So I'm either going to, when I take it off, bend this so that it mates up a little closer, or I might do similar to what I did with the upper, and just make a slit all the way, put it to where it needs to be, and fill it back up with weld. Okay, I think I got rid of my interference issues. I actually had to take this lower torque box out and bend it, change the actual angle on here. You can see we are about as close together as we can, and that's just a little light clamping, and it mates right up. I did change the angle up here, just basically took a hammer to it on my vise just to give it a nice consistent bend up there. And we're actually close enough over here. I don't think I need to make this cut line and spread it. I think we're going to be close enough. The book calls for a few stitch welds here. I think when I got it, it was all the way down stitch welded. So I'll probably just do a few inches, and see how it goes. So yeah, I'm pretty happy. The shape up here, the original torque box had these two holes. This is actually where the new torque box, it's bent a little differently up here. So I'll see if I can fill in this hole and this old hole. Obviously, I'm going to bend this back straight before I do anything. Yeah, let me just show you this. Remember, I had let's see if you can see this. Remember, we had the holes that were half a hole off. So now, throw my glove down. Just a little bit, you can see that it's actually overhanging a little bit now. So we went too much in the right direction. So this is gonna push up there nicely, just using one finger to do that. So it won't require any crazy clamping or anything like that. So pretty thrilled, almost ready to start burning this back in. I should point out this outer rocker should be galvanized. When you weld on galvanized, apparently the fumes are really bad for you. I don't know exactly what it does, but I don't feel like finding out today. So I'm going to, you can probably hear the ventilation fan sucking out in the background. I'll have plenty of ventilation, and I'm gonna go full cartridge respirator on this. Okay, moment of truth. We made it up good up here. We got the new flange welded in. Everything's lining up. I think we're ready to burn this thing in. We got the bottom half of the torque box welded in. I did stitch welds along the front where it meets the frame rail here, according to what they had in the assembly manual. And you can see the penetration on the welds up top came all the way through. I probably could have positioned those a little further down to get more contact, but I think it's all right. I had mentioned earlier about getting my settings right and getting the heat high enough. You can see this is where I welded down through, getting the top half of the torque box to the bottom half. And you can see the heat affected area. So I definitely got plenty of penetration on those welds there. Pretty happy. In a previous video, I talked about this little gusset plate that goes between the frame rail and the torque box here. I talked about how my car didn't have it originally, and I think I know why. Looking in the assembly manual, it doesn't exist. So I think it's a good idea. I think I'm definitely going to add it. Again, I'm not looking to make this a concourse correct car, but just having the extra structural tying in the torque box to the frame rail will be good. The only point of concern I have about this piece is you can see the front of the torque box there, how it has this little indent in it. There's no gap here. You can see down in there, there's no gap. I marked it with Sharpie. Normally, I mean, you can see they've got gaps built in, and then even in that corner, there's a nice hole where you can see straight through there. I'm pretty sure that's designed so that road gunk and everything doesn't get wet and trapped in there and start to corrode. This is probably minor. It's not a very big pocket, but it is feasible. You're gonna have things building up in there over time. I'm gonna address this. I think I'm gonna probably notch out this lower flange just so that there's space here, so as you know, moisture and things get caught in there, they'll actually drain out and won't just puddle. So I'm not sure exactly what happened, but in between lining everything up and being super careful to get it all in place and flush, either my jack slipped or I didn't get it all the way up or something, so I went ahead and welded it in the absolute wrong place. There were some choice curse words when I noticed this happen, but we move on. So what I wound up doing was cutting that bracket, I started grinding it. I said, now this is gonna be ugly. Cut it off, moved the bracket up to where it needed to be, and then just welded it back together and moved on. There it is, driver's side torque box, fully welded in place. I'm pretty happy with the end result. There was a lot of fiddling here and there, a lot of interference issues, a lot of minor and some slightly bigger than minor problems that had to be overcome. Some were self-induced, like my issue with the gusset right there, but all in all, end of the day, I'm happy. It's welded in, it's solid. Yeah, job done. Okay, here's inside, torque box all welded up. I didn't get the welds perfect. They're going to be covered up, but I just ground them flat enough and fixed any spots where I had pinholes or if I didn't complete the weld all the way, so I went back and took care of those. Yeah, this has been a much bigger project than I originally anticipated. They all tend to be a little bit bigger, but this one was a few different issues. Once I figure out how this interacts with the floor, I drilled holes to weld these two together, and I still might do that, but I'm gonna see how the floor interacts first. Now, if you recall, I supported along multiple spots with these adjustable RV stabilizing jacks, along with my normal jack stands holding the car exactly where it was. I don't think anything moved. Everything was lined up, and a really good indication, my door gap is still the same, still even. So yeah, happy about that. If you're still with me after all of that, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. This has been a pretty fun, at times frustrating, but overall fun task. Yeah, I'm thrilled with the end results. So I guess all's well that ends well. And I had a good time doing it in between a few choice curse words. Let's talk quickly about next steps. So it's probably going to be a couple of weeks until I can tackle another project. I've got some other things to do, some other projects to get going on. So it's kind of to be determined if I need to look at this cowl. So probably in the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna pour some water in the cowl, see if it drains out the drain holes like it should, or if it's coming on inside. That's going to determine the course, the next course of the project, whether or not I remove the cowl and tackle firewall and cowl, or if I move right onto the passenger side torque box and floors and just get toe kick boards instead of a full firewall. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. Thanks for watching.